everyone, welcome to your first math lesson with me. We are getting close to the end of the chapter, and at the end of the week there will be a test. So we're going to do a little bit of word problems this week and some review as well before we get started, before we get onto the test. For today we are looking at word problems, and we're on lesson 9.13, which can be found on page 277 on your textbook. Looks like this. What I want to do is just go over a couple of examples with you, and then we'll get right into our work today. Before we get started, we have looked at some word problems before with adding and subtracting, but now we are doing some bigger numbers. So what I want to do is kind of refresh our brains about what words we look for in a word problem that tell us to add, and what words we look for in a word problem that tell us to subtract. So on this side, some words we have that tell us to add are more, both, in total, in all, together, plus, and with. If you hear any of those words in your word problems today, those are going to be adding word problems. And on this side, we have some subtracting words, which means if you hear them in your word problems, we are going to be subtracting that word problem. So some of those words are gave, fewer, left, difference, more than, away, and less. So what I want to get started with right away is just get right into it. I have two word problems here, so I'm going to read the first one to you, and then we'll try and solve it. So the important information we're looking for are our adding or subtracting keywords that are going to tell us if we add or if we subtract, and the numbers. We can't do adding or subtracting without the numbers. So let's read the first one. It says, Rosa collects shells. Is any of that important information? We can't do our adding or subtracting without it. It's not. It's very interesting information, but it's not going to help us do adding or subtracting. She had 68 shells. So here we have some important information. She had 68 shells. 68 is one of our numbers. Let's underline it. That way we don't forget about it. It's important. Continue reading. But yesterday she gave 27 to her brother. Some more important information. Another number. Gave 27 to her brother. How many does she have now? How many does she have now? So I want you to take a second and think. Is this going to be adding or is this going to be subtracting? We have our important numbers underlined, but there are some words in there that tell us if we add or if we subtract. Can you think about what that word was or words were? In our subtracting side, some of our key words again were gave, fewer, left, difference, more than, away, and less. So our key word here is that she gave. She didn't keep, she didn't get, she gave some away. If you give something away, you have less than what you started with. So when we subtract, we always do the biggest number first. Our biggest number is 68. And our next number is 27. And we know we're subtracting, so now we need to figure out what the answer is. Now we can divide our question into tens and ones. Sometimes that will help us keep our thoughts organized a little bit. So let's always start with the ones column, which is 8 minus 7. Try and figure out what 8 minus 7 is. 8 minus 7 is 1. If you have 8 and you take away 7, all that's left over is just 1. Now let's move on to the tens columns. The tens column looks like this, 6 minus 2. So what is 6 minus 2? 6 minus 2 is 4. So our answer is 41. She had 68 shells. She take away 27. All she has left is 41 shells, which is still a lot. Let's move on to the next question. The next question says this: my dad went fishing. Is that important information? Is it going to help us figure out if we're adding or if we're subtracting? It's not. It's interesting, but it's not important information. He caught a 234-pound marlin. We have some important information here. A really big number, 234. Then he caught a 21-pound red snapper. How many pounds of fish did he catch in all? So we have our important numbers there. Thinking back to some of our important adding or subtracting keywords, we see that it says in all, which we can find in our adding keywords, in all. So let's add those numbers together. 234 is our first number, and then we're going to add 21. When we add them together, now we need to divide it into ones column, tens column, and the hundreds column. So my ones column first. 4 plus 1. What is that? 4 plus 1 more is 5. I'll write my 5 down. The next one says 3 plus 2. The tens column is 3 plus 2. We know that is also 5, so let's write that down. And the last column, the hundreds column, is just a 2. There's nothing else for us to add there, so we'll just drop our 2 down into the hundreds column. So in total, my dad would have caught 255 pounds of fish. That is a lot of fish. Now you can take a look in your textbook on to page 277. I will read the questions for you. What you need to do is decide if you are adding or subtracting. You're going to write in the adding or the subtracting question in the circle, or the symbol in the circle, and then write down the numbers you are adding or subtracting, and then the answer. So the first one says, Wendy and Ricardo found 77 shells at the beach. They used 30 shells to decorate a sandcastle. How many shells are left? So if you would like to kind of figure out what the important information is, you could underline the numbers and the keyword that tells you if it is adding or if it is subtracting, and then solve the problem. The next one says, Suki's teacher needs 56 beads for art. Suki counted 29 blue beads. She counted 30 green ones. Will there be enough beads? So this one's a little bit tricky. We have 3 numbers here, but we only need to use two of these numbers. Try and figure out what two numbers you're going to add together to figure out if there will be enough beads. The next question. Mando caught a 244-pound shark. He caught a 20-pound tuna. How many pounds of fish did he catch in all? When you are writing the numbers for this question, make sure that you put your hundreds into the hundreds spot. But if the second number is not in the hundreds, that you keep the second line, the hundreds box, free. You don't write anything there. You just write your number in the tens and the ones. Then you can turn the page. On the next page, you have a couple more of the exact same type of questions, and I'll read them to you again. It says, Emmett put 65 cents into the offering. Then he found 3 dimes and 2 pennies. He put those into the offering too. How much money did Emmett give? So here you know what one of the numbers are. Then you have to think back to your knowledge about money and figure out how much 3 dimes and 2 pennies are worth to get your second number, and then add or subtract them together. The next question. Raya saw some coins on the sidewalk. She picked up 1 dime and 7 pennies. Then she found 2 dimes and 2 pennies. How many cents did Raya find in all? Again, you first need to figure out how much money that is, and then add or subtract it together. And the last word problem is this. Tan's mom gave him $1.99 to spend. Tan spent $1.45. How much money did Tan have left? So here, the dollars, as soon as we get into dollars, we know that's 100 cents. So we know that the dollars are the hundreds place, and then the cents are the tens and the ones place. Figure out if you're adding or subtracting, and then write the answer on the line. Now the very bottom of the page is a little bit of review. Previously, you measured the lines in inches. Now you're going to measure the 2 lines in centimeters. Remember, that's when our ruler says cm, and we always start by putting our ruler at the 0 or the edge of the ruler if there's no 0 at the end of the line, and then measure how long it is and write the distance on the line here, and then you are done for today.